First step is to remove the tire. Second step is to support the lower control arm at the bottom. And then close the tire. And we're gonna do this live for you. So this is the actual time taken to do the job. Okay, so now we're supporting it right in the lower control arm area, right there. We're gonna raise it up just enough to put support on it so it doesn't drop back down. And now we're taking off 4 bolts for the plate. Okay, and that's gonna allow us to drop down the rear end on this side enough to squeeze and squeak out the spring assembly and shock assembly. Alright. Next step is the 4 bolts up top, which are 13 mil, right?
Yep.
13 mil bolts. So your 13 mil probably swivel socket's the best thing to use. A 3/8 gun, or you do it by hand with a ratchet. Basically, trying to get a better shot here for you guys. We're not doing it. It's too dark. Alright, so there's the last one, I think, or we might have one more to go. Alright, so all 4 top bolts are out. Now what we're going to do is remove that lower bolt that holds the entire strut assembly in place. And that's a 7/8 bolt. We got the air gun on this side. And then we're going to do a socket or ratchet on this side to hold it. So now we got that bolt out. There we go, here in a minute. Tap out. Yeah, I can't remember if I turned the audio off on this one or not. So we'll figure it out when we're done the video. Alright, we're raising the hoist up now a little bit. Because earlier we dropped the hoist down onto the arm to put extra weight on it, so it would release tension on the spring and strut. Now the bolt's out, release the jack down, so now it's kind of hanging freely. So next step will be to pop that strut, oh sorry, caliper. The brake caliper has to come off. And that is a 7mm socket to remove the caliper bolts. Then once this is done, we'll hang the caliper up. Ideally, you want to hang it with a bungee cord or mechanics wire or coat hanger, something to support it. Since we're not doing any major banging or beating on things, I think it's gonna be okay just to let it sit on top of the caliper or on top of the rotor and brake assembly, steering knuckle, whatever you want to call it. We'll let it rest there and keep an eye on it. And then there's a pad clip you got to take off right here as well. Spring thing right here has got to come off. That's what holds the pads in place, they don't rattle. It's an anti-rattle clip. So you take 2 bolts off the rear caliper bracket and then pull that pad clip all the way, rattle clip, and then the caliper's off. Alright, we're going to compress this caliper back as well. There's your anti-rattle clip off. And then we use the same little tool to kind of compress the pad a little bit. What you're doing is you're putting it on the caliper usually, or the metal part of the pad, and press it in. Then off comes the caliper. There is your wire cutters for that zip tie. And as you can see, there's the back of the caliper. And there's the caliper bolts. We had to take loose those two bolts. One there and one there side. And this one had a zip tie holding the lines together, so we cut the zip tie off. We'll put a new one on when we're done. Glad you remembered. Alright. As we're pulling down on it now, we keep the jack out of the way. The jack has gone all the way. We're pulling down as hard as we can on it, trying to get this thing to break loose. And the goal here is to compress the spring, or compress the shock up in there as best as possible for clearance purposes. So you gotta press really hard and squeeze that shock upward so it compresses. Once it compresses, you can pull the whole assembly out. The side of the caliper sits on.
2.5 is too big.
Turn that. There we go. There.
Alright, so what we did now basically is we got the shock compressed up and out of the spring assembly. And as you can see, the long bolt is still in there. And we're using that to support it. No. That's coming out too, I'm sorry. Alright, so you see the spring's kind of starting to work its way out. The shock is working its way out. And there you go, it's pried up and out. Slide it out.
Again, be very careful with the electrical wires for the e-brake here and this brake hose right here.
Yep, be very careful. I don't want to break any damn thing. Kind of hold it up all the way while you twist and turn the assembly out. I'm pretty sure this whole thing will come out if you had to, or not really trying to remove it if we don't have to. We're going to show you guys the short, easy way to do this job versus the 5-hour way that the book tells you to do it. So we're just rotating and twisting the strut. Just really tight on that knuckle side. Oops. As you can see, there's a nice gap now between the top of the spring mount, strut mount, and
there we go.
the vehicle. So now we got our tools up in there. Remove that nut. Okay, so there's a spring, everything's in the way, but out. Now, take a pair of vice grips, which you can only use on the old parts. And we're going to squeeze that shaft down as tight as we can get it, so we try to break that nut free on top, while it's still in the vehicle. Because that mount is so large, it's going to be a major challenge to get to come out of the car. And there's no reason to do it. Yeah, I'm on the phone. Take a message.
It's rolling out.
I'll call that number. It's fine. Alright, so vice grips are on nice and tight. Now we're going to attempt with the air ratchet and see if it breaks free. If it does, we're golden. If not, then we'll have to crack it free by hand and then work it off the ratchet.
Still a little too far in there.
Alright, so vice grips are on. And look at that, we got her out. Alright, there's a spacer washer on top. You're going to see a very, very flattened bushing on the bottom. And that's what makes these things rattle, is the bushings to completely wear out. And that big long stud you see on top is the one we just took down off of. It extends to the shop. And there you go. Alright, so we're going to drop the strut now. Loosen that. There goes the shock on the ground. Pretty simple. And now assembly process. This is critical, it's done right. I don't think this one has different stuff. I think there's, nope, they're different. So there's a specific way to put this together. There is instructions with it to help if need be. But once we show you on the video, you won't need instructions. It'll be that simple. So big washer, fattest one goes on first. Biggest bushing goes on first.
This spacer came out of the old assembly.
Okay, so you gotta reuse the old spacer. Slides down the middle. And then that will go up in there. And then you'll have another bushing to install up here. Yep. There's the old bushing in comparison to the new bushing comparison. As you can see, completely worn out, flattened, and wasted. There's your clumps and rattles. Alright, so we're gonna insert the shock back up through the tube. It's gonna come out the top. Gonna put our spacers on, our washer, or sorry, our foam bushings, as you would say. Shock bushings. And then we have the old washer that came off the other one. And make sure it's facing the right direction. It's concaved, I believe you'd say.
Oops.
And it has to face with the concave part facing up. And then the point part facing down. You put your nut on it. And then we're gonna use the air ratchet to tighten it back down again. And see if it'll go. Right, we'll try. Give it a shot if you want, see what it does. It's a new, wiggle zip it on. If not, I'll have to hold it with the wrench and do it that way. Look at that. That sure beats using a ratchet wrench. However, it is our favorite tool to use. That was much, much easier. So if it doesn't work out, you can't do it that way. You can use 2 wrenches on it, or use a pair of vice grips on the very top of the studded area. There's a spot for a 6-point hex area. You can grab that with a pair of vice grips. Just don't vice grip the threads with the nut threads on. So now we're twisting it back up into place. Just gonna rotate it back in. Just kind of finagle it, get it up through. If I can show you here, this looks like. Alright, so we're twisting and twisting. Trying to get hold up there, get it lined up. Yep, now comes the fun part. The assembly. Oh, put the last nut on.
Yeah, I'm getting the nut started to hold the plate so the plate doesn't want to drop down.
Right. Alright, so now we're putting a 4.
The other 3 were studs, so the stud may come out or the nut may come off, whichever way.
Yep. This side came apart with the nut still attached to the stud. Other side came apart with no studs removed. They stayed in place. So kind of depends on how the car wants to do what it wants to do. So we're starting our bolts by hand. Always start bolts by hand. Never with power tools or hand tools. Because if it won't start by hand, it ain't gonna start with the power tool. You're just gonna strip it. So we're putting put the 4 cover bolts, mount bolts back in. There's one there, there's one there, there's one over there, there's one on the back side. There's 4 total. Alright, so we're getting ready to lock that thing down. Air tools. 1. 2. 3. and number 4. Alright, so plate's up there, ain't going nowhere now. Now the fun part, prying down on the whole suspension, get the strut in place. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're trying to position it back where it was, which means compressing the strut sometimes, the spring.
Make sure you get the rotation of the strut right.
Right.
Or the spring rather.
Yep. On every
spring.
spring.
The camera in right here, same. You can see. There's a right here, the end of the spring, and in the rubber pad right here, and then on the control arm right here, there's a notch where everything lines up.
Right. So on all springs, there is a spot in the spring you'll be able to see like an imprint. It shows where the spring lined up at. It's critical. That goes back exactly where it originally came out from. Plus, the mount piece itself is also lined with the lower control arm assembly as well. So you gotta make sure it's all lined up and going back together when you're done, or you'll have clunks and rattles and squeaks and crazy stuff going on that you won't be able to put a finger on, and that's won't be the cause. And like I said earlier, make sure you're careful of the brake lines, the ABS lines, any fuel lines that are in the way when dropping this stuff out. Be very careful with them. That way you don't do more damage than good. So right now we're jacking the vehicle back up again to line up our holes for the shock. Alright, so we're going to drop the car down onto it, put some more weight on it, and now we're throwing the bolt through. Makes it real easy to go in. There's no tension on it. There's a 7/8 wrench or ratchet or socket, goes on both sides to lock them down. Alright, here's the air gun. We're going to lock down both sides. And she's good and tight and down this side. Now all I gotta do is put the brake caliper back together. Reassemble brake caliper and pad stuff. Always start these by hand on all calipers. Never use power tools or hand tools. That's how we get so many strip bolts coming in our shop. People trying to do their own stuff. Must use right tools. And again, I remind you, this is live. This is full time. No editing. This is exactly start to finish the job. And like I said in the other video, this is normally about a 4.5 to 5 hour job. I would say we're doing it about 30 minutes a side on average. So this is about an hour job. I seen online some guy could do it in about 2 hours. Looks like we got that beat pretty well too. So right now we installed the caliper hardware again. The pad inter-rattle clips for the pads. Those are up back installed. They're a little tricky to get started. The best thing to do is get one in, like the bottom one in, set it up on it, and then use pliers or a screwdriver to get the top one lined up and pushed in. A little bit of a pain in the butt, but not too bad. Alright, and now we're going through and tightening down the 4 cover bolts. Put them in and tuck them down. And that's pretty much it, folks. get the jack loose and down if it wasn't already, which it usually should be. Bolt your tire back on. That's all she wrote. So I hope this helps you guys out and appreciate how to fix and repair Jaguar XJ6 struts and shocks on the rear. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.